Hello. We're here for a little session about George Bush Sr. and the Gulf War. I call Bush Sr. Daddy Bush because it helps me differentiate between him and his son, who will be president later. HW and George W. is a little confusing. This is Bush Sr. He was Reagan's vice president, and Reagan was so popular that people wanted more Reagan and ended up doing that by electing his vice president. He had experience because he had been the vice president, but he found himself having some big challenges, including a war on foreign soil. The military spending of the Reagan years meant less spending on things um, that we needed to take care of back home. Bush promised he wouldn't raise taxes, but he found that he had to, even after using the expression, read my lips, no new taxes, and telling the people that that was going to be a big platform that he ran on. One second. Let me get my pen. We will do blue pen. President Bush finds that he's going into a recession. People are hurting financially. The economy isn't doing great. Foreign competition led to even less demand for American products. You could get them cheaper overseas. There were lots of layoffs, especially in places like the steel industry. We learned about that during the Gilded Age. A lot of steel and automotive work was done here in kind of the eastern part of the country, Midwest / eastern part. People in the Northeast began to move, and they started calling this the Rust Belt. It's a negative term that meant, things were rusting. It wasn't doing so well. People were getting out of this area because industries weren't booming the way that they used to due to it being able to outsource and buy from other places. The recession hit African Americans really hard, and it caused civil unrest. There was a very notable riot in Los Angeles. A jury found a policeman not guilty for beating a man named Rodney King. It was caught on tape. Everyone saw it, and they thought that the police officers had done the wrong thing. And after he was found unguilty, African Americans rioted because they felt that justice had not been served. President Bush did sign the Americans with Disabilities Act. It prohibited discrimination against disabled people when they went out in public or when they were hired, and also helps them get more access. Wheelchair ramps made it to where people could go to work even if they were disabled. During George Bush's administration, the Cold War came to an end, even though it was President Reagan who notably said, tear down this wall. It actually did not come down until Bush Sr.'s administration, and East and West Germany were reunited. We cracked down on drugs, including the imprisonment. We captured a big drug boss, Noriega, in Central America. But most notably from his time in office was the Gulf War, where he goes head-to-head with Saddam Hussein. After a very long war between Iran and Iraq, which are neighbors, Iraq ends up being completely broke. They had borrowed a lot of money that they could not pay back. The price of oil is falling. It's major export. And Iraq finds himself financially crippled and needing to do something to make a move. Their leader, Saddam Hussein, is also really mad because Kuwait, this little tiny country here on the Gulf of Iraq, had been carved out by the British because it was in a very prime location for them to take oil. Kuwait was also full of oil, and take boats from this little harbor here back to England. Saddam Hussein was mad because he said, y'all had no right to take that in the first place. It belonged to us. And at this point in time, he needs money and he owes money and he's mad. And so he decides that he wants to take Kuwait back. So if you remember, the United States and England, we're best friends at this time. We've gone through World War I together. We've gone through World War II together. And so if England gets involved in something, usually the United States will step up in the past, eventually, if not at first, to help. Kuwait had done some things to basically mock Iraq. Oh, we've got the backing of a very powerful country. England, they were selling oil for more money than was agreed upon, and they had been slant drilling, which is sucking oil out of Iraq by using slant drilling. That's when you slant. Well, you know what, guys? I don't know a whole lot about drilling oil, but it's when you take your land. So there's our Kuwait, here's Iraq. That's exactly what they look like. And they were sucking oil out of the ground of Iraq and stealing it. So Iraq becomes aware that Kuwait is doing this, and it makes him even more angry. So Saddam Hussein therefore begins to think about using his armed forces to insist upon a resolution of the border and money disputes. And the United States basically said, we are not getting involved. We don't have an opinion. So the war begins in August 1990. 100,000 Iraqi soldiers went into little tiny Kuwait and took it over within 2 days. It's teeny tiny. Somehow the United States was shocked with the overwhelming support of the United States public. Everyone's watching, and we're like, wow, I can't believe he did that. The United States put troops in Saudi Arabia, which is next to Iraq. It's another little country. So here we are. There's us protecting Saudi Arabia from Iraq, which has invaded Kuwait down here. It was called Operation Desert Shield because we were shielding Saudi Arabia, which was full of oil that we used, and we were afraid that he was going to take it next. So we're standing around waiting. We're shielding, protecting Saudi Arabia. And we said, you better leave Kuwait alone. Well, he doesn't leave Kuwait, but he also doesn't invade Saudi Arabia. And we're standing around and we're tired of waiting. So then we began the second part, which was Operation Desert Storm. When you storm something, you attack. So we attacked to kick the Iraqi military out of Kuwait. So we had to chase them out. We stood around waiting, and he was like, yeah, I don't think I want to fight with the United States military. I'm not going to invade Saudi Arabia. American support Desert Storm. In mid-January of 1991, Operation Desert Storm included a lot of aerial bombings of Iraq. We bombed Iraq for 6 weeks and left a lot of infrastructure in shambles. Unable to stand up to our military, Saddam was like, yeah, this isn't working out. But as he retreated and as they left Kuwait, he was like, oh yeah, you guys want this so bad? This is what we're fighting about, all of this oil. What he does is, as he's leaving and retreating, he orders all of Kuwait's oil wells set on fire. And they burned and burned and burned. And he burned off and destroyed just thousands and thousands of gallons of oil that nobody got to use. So essentially, I usually say he kind of got the last laugh because, yeah, he lost. He had to go back, but he wasted so much oil that everybody was so concerned about. The United States still saw it as a huge victory because we made him back down. And it only took 6 weeks to get Saddam Hussein to agree to leave Kuwait alone, which was our friends, controlled that country. We killed 22,000 Iraqis. A lot of them were civilians that were bombed when we were in the middle of Operation Desert Storm. Only 113 of us were killed, and actually a lot of those numbers were accidents, like what we call friendly fire incidents. So it was seen as a huge victory. 22,000 of them, 113 of us. I mean, that's crazy low numbers. When we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people dying in World War II, thousands of people dying in Vietnam. We did get in trouble for something called the Highway of Death. We did bomb retreating military members. So the United States, we like to practice, someone's retreating. If someone surrenders, we say, okay, it's our policy. We're not going to harm you if you have surrendered. You're retreating. But the United States um, did bomb miles and miles of highway of people that were retreating, including civilians trying to get away and go back to Iraq from Kuwait. And a lot of people in the international community criticized us for doing that. After the war, Saddam Hussein was still in power. I like to call this the war against Saddam Hussein part 1, because we are going to fight with him again later with baby Bush. So Daddy Bush fights the Gulf War with Saddam Hussein, who gets away. Even though we blew up a lot of his country and Baghdad is in shambles, he's still in power. He's still a bad man, and we are not done with him. So stay tuned for part 2 of Saddam Hussein. Thank you for joining me for the Bush Senior era.